Hey there, Scott here from SocialNRG Presents, and thanks so much for joining us. We've got another really great episode for you today, this time with special guest Sam Feldman, one of the most successful managers in the music business and the CEO of Canada's largest full-service talent agency, Feldman Associates. Sam has worked with countless artists over the years and now represents more than 200 internationally acclaimed performers, including Robbie Williams, Dido, Coldplay, David Gray, Sarah McLachlan, Bryan Adams, Krall, Nelly Furtado, and the Barenaked Ladies. And now Sam joins us from his special oasis in Hawaii to discuss his life, his successes, and his incredible career in the music industry. So sit back, relax, and get ready as SocialNRG now presents you with your Backstage Pass.
Hey, Mick, how you doing? Great to see you. Thanks for joining us today. How you been?
Excellent, thanks. Wow, I'm really enjoying this camera. I was going to say, it's going to be great having Sam on the show. I haven't talked to Sam in years, so we got a lot of things to unpack with him for sure.
Oh, this is going to be an exciting show. Well, without further ado, why don't we bring the guest of honor in, Mr. Sam Feldman.
Hey, Sam, how you doing?
Good.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Thanks. Do you want me to go back on gallery or do it like this?
Whatever you like.
It was good.
I was going to say, so Sam, I haven't talked to you. I haven't talked to you for about, I'm thinking it's close to 20 years. It's weird. The last time you and I were actually in person, I think this will bring you back. It was at Buffalo Bills and Whistler, and you had Boy and a Dolphin there. That band.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how long ago it was. And I was there because I think I was doing some sort of a solo gig up in Whistler. And I walked in to see them because I'd heard so much about them. I actually ended up singing on their album at one point. But I remember walking in, and I was so impressed with them. And I remember you walked up to me and said, what do you think of these guys? I was going, they're great. Why are you asking me? But you've always been good that way, though. You've always been good with me. I remember back in the days of Shama, even, I remember Frank Ludwig saying, he says, Sam is such a humanitarian manager compared to Bruce, because Bruce was always sort of known as the rough guy, and you were always a guy that sort of nurtured people, And so I think that's
yeah. Well, I joke, it's we had a good cop, bad cop thing, but it didn't take much to be the good cop.
Okay, I want to open up a few things here. First of all, where were you born?
Shanghai, China.
Shanghai, China. How does that happen? What did your parents do?
Well, there's a number of ways to answer that question. So my family is originally from Russia. Like, my mom was born in Russia. My dad was actually born in Harbin, China, which is right across the river from Russia, where a lot of Russian Jews used to escape. There's a lot of anti-Semitism in Russia, so they used to get in a boat, get across to China. And China never had any kind of a passport control issue, and they didn't care if you're Jewish or whatever, because you just looked a certain way. So there was a big community of Russian Jews in Harbin that gravitated to Shanghai, which was really in those days almost a European city with French, British, Persians, Russians, English, sort of in a sense living on top of the Chinese, who were all, not all, but they were the laborers at that time. Not a fair situation that got rectified in a very violent way later when Mao Zedong came in. So, we had to split, get out of there, and wound up in Vancouver.
What year did you move to Vancouver? What year did you move to Vancouver?
51. I was just a baby, 2.5 years old.
Okay. Because I was going to say, it's interesting because you sort of touched a bit on the anti-Semitism thing. Now, me, as you know, I'm from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Our whole ethnic community was so tiny. There was Italians and French people, and Catholics and Protestants. I think we had one Black family, and he was the teacher at my high school. There was one Black family in 75,000 people at the time. It was just such a close community. So I knew nothing about the Jewish thing at all, except when I watched Ed Sullivan. It seemed like all the comedians were Jewish. They always talked about this Jewish thing. And aside from my catechism and learning about Jesus, I knew nothing about Judaism, So the anti-Semitism thing was just something that never, ever hit me. It was something I never even thought of, but you actually lived through that crap.
Yeah, well, obviously I was too young to know it, but growing up, yeah, it didn't really. My dad used to ask me, has anyone ever made any comments? And early on in, high school and stuff, not really. And that all of a sudden started to happen the odd time. And people would make some comments and I would be, what? It was just so weird. And of course, then the fight was on. It's a lot of, because there was a lot of brawling back then.
So what were you like as a student in school?
Terrible.
Were you an academic?
No, worse. School to me was painfully boring. I couldn't stand it. I would do anything I could to get out of school. I was basically a bit of a juvenile delinquent. So I would say I maybe got grade 10 education at best.
You and me both. I don't have my grade 10.
Yeah, but the only difference is you have talent.
Yeah. Well, as he speaks from his place in Hawaii. Okay, so I don't know. Talent comes in different ways, buddy.
Well, the difference. Yeah. Well, then again, the other difference is I spent more time in a pool hall, so I learned a few things.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So I want to sort of get into how you became who you were. Now you started. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you sort of worked lumber camp sort of thing until you came back to Vancouver and started working in nightclubs. Is this correct? Kind of? Is that an idea?
No, that's a bit glamorous. I just, the story's probably redundant by now, but as a young guy, the whole thing for kids when they were 17, 18, 19 was to go travel around Europe with some of your buddies. So I had gone up to Prince Rupert to work in a pulp mill to make some money, basically to go, hang around Europe with my buddies. And, but when I got back to Vancouver, I guess this was probably 67, 68, somewhere in there. And of course, I immediately spent all the money. So I couldn't go to Europe until I got into a couple of poker games and I used to gamble a bit. So I got lucky, made enough money, got to Europe, traveled around for about 6 months. And in that process, I ran out of money. So I borrowed $300 from a very good friend of mine to get back home. And it was the strangest thing. I'll never forget it. I'm sitting on the plane going back home, and my friend that I was with said, "So, let's get some money and come back to Europe." And I looked at him and said, "It's the weirdest thing, but I just have this strong feeling that I'm going to get into something that's going to kind of take me away as a career, and I really want to get into the music business." Now, don't even ask me why. I just had a pull. I wanted to get into the music business. So when I got back, now I owe my friend $300. How am I going to get $300? At the time, it might as well have been $1 billion to me. It was just so. It's amazing now. To think $300 is just an epic amount of money. And I was just about to head back up north just to make the money to pay him back and so on. And a friend of mine was working at a nightclub, the Daisy Cabaret, and he said, we need a doorman over here. Like a bouncer doorman. Today I refer to it as maitre d', but really it was bouncer. And I thought, wow, there's bands on the stage, and the stage is like 15 feet from the door, and therefore I'm 15 feet from the band. If I take that job, I'm going to learn something about the music business. I'll get into it. But I agonized for a whole weekend because I owed this $300. And what am I going to do? Because this job pays like $2.25 an hour. And so I went to my buddy, who's still one of my very best friends, and said, "Look, here's the deal. If I take this job, I'm going to learn something. If I go up north, I'll pay you a lot." He said, "Oh, it's going to be ridiculous. You'll pay the money. Just do what you want to do." So I started to work at the Daisy Cabaret, 5th and Fur, which ironically is 5 blocks from my current office. So I like to joke that I've come 5 blocks in my whole career. And 2 weeks later, there was a friend of mine from high school that was in a band. And I went, "Well, I think I know everything there is to know now. I've worked at this club for 2 weeks. What else could I possibly need to know?" And I said, "I'll be your manager." A band called Uncle Slug, not to be confused with Doug and the Slugs, but Uncle Slug.
Right.
And I started to manage that band. And then I started to manage another band called Sweet Beaver. And then there was a guy, Tony White, who had a little agency that he ran out of the Daisy. So he hired me, and I started to book bands and work the door. And, one thing led to the next. And, here it is 100 years later. So
you said you thought you wanted to get into the music business. Now, who are you? You must have been a fan of some acts or something that must have attracted you to the music business.
Well, I mean, on the music side, I was, I still am, a huge music fan. I mean, growing up, in my era was pop music. The first single that I ever bought in my life, don't ask me why, was Del Shannon, Runaway. Must have played it, I was like 10 years old or something. And then I really got into the whole Motown thing later on. That was my favorite music, but I loved rock and roll, loved Sinatra. The Beatles came along. I was in the hospital with pneumonia, and I had a little 2-transistor radio. And I'll never forget it. I'm lying there feeling sick, and all of a sudden the song came on, and I'd never, because I was out of the loop in the hospital, I'd never heard of the Beatles, but the song came on the radio. And I can remember picking that radio, just looking at it, I go, what is that? This is unbelievable. Fantastic. First Beatles single, and this just blew me away. And then a week later, they're on the Ed Sullivan Show that you referenced. So obviously loved the Beatles, and then got into the whole British invasion stuff. And of course, then it was the whole Bob Dylan changed it all again. I can remember hearing him for the first time, oddly enough, walking up a street in Vancouver, and there was a beatnik restaurant called the Black Spot. Oh, you young guys maybe don't even know what beatniks are, but they were the pre-hippie thing. And I'm walking past this restaurant, and all of a sudden this music came out. And it stopped me, like literally stopped me in my tracks on the street. And I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I listened to this whole song, Positively 4th Street, Dylan, got into that. And so my taste in music has been really, really eclectic. But at the same time, growing up, I always wondered, how does this work? Here's a concert, who's putting it on, who's making the money, who does what's the backroom stuff? And I was just looking for a way to get into the music business. At the beginning, I didn't know if I'd be a promoter, a manager, or what. But I actually threw a gig at the Pender Auditorium, which is now, I don't think the venue exists anymore. And I had my band open up for this band, Seeds of Time, that was a local band that had a single out called My Hometown way back. I was out there with a staple gun as far away as Surrey, putting up posters for $6 a ticket. And this thing sold out. And I knew that I had the instinct then to know, well, if I put my little band on with that bigger band, someone's going to see him, and typical classic opening act thing. So we put that thing on, and from the door at the Daisy, my good friend Ronnie Cormier was a black belt in karate. I said, well, you better work the door here. Separate from a couple of bikers showed up with some beer. He wouldn't let him in. The guy threw a full beer into his face and exploded. And the guy took off. I caught the guy at the bottom of the stairs, and that wasn't too good for him. And so this music business is pretty good. This is fun.
Well, you were kind of a tough guy. I mean, you're a well-built guy. You always have been. You're tall and well-built.
Keep talking.
No, it's true. I mean, it's true. You're not by any means a small guy. You've never been heavy. It looks like you've always kept yourself in shape. So
reasonable. Yeah.
So, but back in the days when you were a bouncer, I mean, in my mind's eye, I can see a guy, you can be intimidating, but I think you would be a guy that would work it out first. Do you remember? Remember Harley? Yeah. Harley was a roadie guy that used to work for all the bands back in the day.
Sure, he worked for Craig McDowell. Yeah, he was a big guy.
And Harley was wonderful that way, because he could walk up to you with that handlebar mustache and muscles out to here, and walk up and just go, you don't really want to do this, do you? He'd talk people out of fighting no matter how mad they were.
Yeah, I think I was pretty good at talking people out. There was the odd time that wasn't possible, but you can usually talk some sense into people.
Yeah. Well, it's hard when they're drunk, but I mean, I that's what used to blow my mind with Harley. Just, I don't want to get off on a tangent too much, but I'd see him with these guys that were just wanting to kill each other, and he'd bring them out in the street, and he'd just talk to them and go, really, this is the best club in town. Do you really want to be barred from here for the rest of your life over this? Come on, guys, shake hands. Let's go back in and have a drink.
Yeah, he was a big guy, big bodybuilder. Ironically, so when I started booking bands at and working at the Daisy, you book a band. Back then, there was no such thing as an exclusive band. So it was just really whoever got the gig and got to the band first, kind of put the thing together and got the commission. So you had to really hustle. Taught me a lot. But who's going to do the contracts? Well, I used to drive up to Janet's house because her mom had a typewriter with some carbon paper between the, in the old days, you had carbon paper between the paper to make copies of the contract. She would type my contracts because we were friends. I was a family
You knew
friend.
Janet that long?
Yeah, I was a friend of her brother's.
I had no idea. Wow.
Yeah, I've known. It's only about 58 years or something now. That's all. but we were friends. But we both went and married other folks and then circled back later.
Yeah, because I remember when you guys started dating, and I thought that was
so.
But you guys knew each other for that long. Well, that's good when you have that kind of history.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Anyway, so let's get back to so you and Bruce Allen. So Bruce Allen is booking bands at one end of town. You're booking bands at another end of town. Is that kind of what's going on? Or
no, not at all. Bruce is. I'm working the door, and Bruce is pulling up in his old green Cougar and putting the crosstown bus and thin red line and so on into the Daisy. So he's booking the bands in. He represented a bunch of the top bar bands around. Remember the scene then? You just came in at the tail end of it with Shama. Was a bar scene, top 40 bands playing show music, and there was no disco. So I met Bruce. I met Bruce there professionally, so to speak. But we grew up in the Dunbar area. He's a little older than me, and we're both, bad kids. And so I knew who he was. So I met him there, and so then when I started booking bands and doing all that stuff, when Shelley Siegel had started working for Bruce and said to me that Bruce wanted to have a conversation with me. So I went down to his office and he suggested that we team up, and we did. And we're different kind of guys. So it's been a rough and ready road, but we're good pals now. And I think we've done something together that gets ignored in a sense by the country. I always get a kick out of the Toronto centric attitude, up there. It's so funny because if you look at the roster of talent that our company has amassed over time, from BTO to Bryan Adams to Joni Mitchell to Leonard Cohen to today Michael Bublé and James Taylor and Sarah, and I'm really proud of our collective roster. And I think if you probably combined all the talent from Toronto or anywhere through the years in Canada, I would hazard a guess that we've represented more than all of it combined.
Yeah, especially on a world market.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing is the world market. I think one of the issues with Toronto was the population based created a mini star. There were so many people in that area, right? Mm-hmm. You got to have a mini star system. So basically, every band wanted to be Rush, so there was some redundancy in style. Whereas in Vancouver, you had the influence of the UK and Europe. You had the influence of America just across the border. And if you're an artist in Vancouver, you had to get out. You had to cross the Rockies. You had to get down to the States. So you had to do something that was just not local, so to speak.
It's kind of interesting. The whole thing with when I lived in Sault Ste. Marie, and I think this goes along with what you're saying, is that there was stars to me in Sault Ste. Marie because they would come up and do concerts in Sault Ste. Marie.
Sure,
they probably couldn't fill a bar in Toronto. But they'd be playing concerts at the Memorial Gardens in Sault Ste. Marie or high school gymnasiums and stuff, and they'd have records out and this sort of thing, and nobody heard of them, west of Sault Ste. Marie or maybe Thunder Bay.
That's right. Yeah.
I talked with Paul Schaefer about that. But that there seemed to be a divide. Like Winnipeg was probably the divide of West and East.
Yeah, that's right.
And the Guess Who, because it was in the middle of Canada, or as Randy likes to call it, the middle of nowhere, because you had to drive everywhere. A lot of bands broke out of that area. It was so cold there. You were either a hockey player or a musician. There was nothing else to do in the winter.
Well, do you remember Don Schaefer, the great buddy of mine? He had that show on CFox called Shape Inside the Box. Yeah. And he had these great pipes. And there was, I forget what band it was, that somebody got him to do the radio spot for them, and he said this. He said, "When you're from Winnipeg, Canada, there's only two ways out: hockey or rock and roll." It was really good. Yeah.
That's like that old joke. It's like, you're from Winnipeg. What? The only thing that ever came out of Winnipeg was hockey players and hookers. My wife's from Winnipeg. Oh yeah, what team she play for?
That's good. That's good.
Okay, so now moving on. So as when you guys amalgamated, because you and Bruce were working under Bruce Allen Talent before you went sort of your separate ways. I hope you don't. This is something I wanted to touch on. I hope you don't mind me saying this. Somebody said to me, I won't say who, that you and Bruce performed the best divorce ever because there was no lawyers involved. You guys just shook hands, said, you take 50%, I take 50%. Let's go do our own thing, and we'll feed the center. And so there was no lawyers sucking the money out of it.
Okay. So there was no lawyers necessary because we never split up the company, right? The only thing that happened was, I mean, it's a long, it's a long story, and we were young and a little bit fucking crazy, and we were just butting heads a bit. And so we thought we're probably better. We're like a divorced couple that's looking after the kids. So basically, I was pretty focused on the agency side of our business at that point. And Bruce, of course, had this meteoric rise in management, looking after BTO, and he'd gone on the road with them. So it was hard for him to come back. It was almost like a green beret coming back and trying to be normalized. And so he was operating at a pretty high level, and I'm trying to build up this agency. So, so there was some clash. So basically I moved out of the building to move the agency and the smaller management stuff I was doing back then into a different location, and put a name on it, which was SL. It sounded like a law firm, really. Feldman Associates, and started to build up that agency. And Bruce continued to build up the management. And of course, I was doing the management thing on the side, which ultimately took over and superseded whatever I had built with the agency nationally. So, and we had our differences, and then we had our friendships, and it's been a rocky road, but I would say that the Bruce and I have come through this probably as better friends than ever. So there was no divorce ultimately. Yeah. There was just a separation, so to speak.
I see. Okay, here's a really good question. Because you've had
that's what you say.
let's hope it's a good question. Because you've had some incredible success as a manager over the past 20 years or so. It's been unbelievable, the people that you've taken on. Is there anybody that you regret not signing at this point? Somebody that slipped through your fingers that you went, geez, I wish I could have done that.
You mean somebody that I could have but didn't,
or somebody you should have pursued? Let's say.
No, I mean, probably, but I'm probably forgetting. I think that there's obviously lots of folks I would have loved to have managed, for sure. Love to manage Ed Sheeran, but don't know him. There's lots, right. There's lots of that. Not really. I mean, just no, not really. Some of that I said, you know what, that's not really worth it. And then they went on to some great success. No, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head like that.
So what year did you and Steve McLachlan come together?
God, I'm really bad with years. So our agency represented Colin James.
Right.
And so I got to know Steve. And this is probably, my God, it's over 20 years ago. And Steve was one of those managers focused on one artist only, and and that's a good thing. And what happened?
Did he come out of the Bumstead fold?
He did. He was with Larry Wanagas, and something happened there where they split up, and I guess Steve wound up with Colin, and Larry wound up with Katie Lang. Right. And Steve got to know the chieftains in Ireland pretty good. And they wanted to make a change in management, but they wanted more of a structure. So Steve was like an independent guy, kind of working out of the house at that point. And he thought that if he teamed up with me, we'd be able to sign him. So we did. And my thinking at the time was, because I'd been really, busting it, trying to break Trooper into America. And it was a really, really a difficult thing to do, was to take a Canadian act who was successful and break him in America. Really, really hard. So along came Steve with the Chieftains, and I knew that they were an artist that could sell out theaters in America, and I knew that was a way into America, and I knew that there was a way to collaborate with them expand the possibilities for some of our clients. So we teamed up on the Chieftains, and then really the rest went from there, because that enabled Joni Mitchell, and of course then the credibility of Joni Mitchell enabled Diana Krall and Nora Jones, and on and on from there.
Did the artists start coming to you guys? Is that what it was?
A bit of a combination. Some come to you, some don't. I mean, it's interesting, but a lot of times we just have a friendship. For example, with Joni, Steve was friends with her boyfriend Don Freed, and got to know Joni. So there was this ongoing social thing that happened for 5 or 6 months, and then we met and spent time with her in Japan. And next thing, she throws it out, hey, maybe you guys can look after me, as opposed to us just kind of pursuing her. Same thing with James Taylor. I met James socially with Joni a number of times before I got brought on originally as a tour consultant. And then I made a record deal for him and made every other deal for him. And, one thing led to the next. I have to thank my partner in that, Mike Gorfain from Gorfain Schwartz in America, who was consulting for him on just generally, because he didn't have a manager. So they brought me in as a tour consultant because I knew that stuff pretty good. And then the relationship just grows. And it's really, as as an artist, it's as much about trust as anything. Mm-hmm. So when they get comfortable with you, they're okay. They feel better about handing it over to them, as opposed to just, here's a straight business deal. Let's just meet over the desk and it's straight business. Yeah. And it's a pretty intense relationship. Yeah. There's got to be trust.
Right. No, there's an artist, James Taylor. Good Lord. Well, all of them. Really, all the people that you've handled, from Joni to Diana Krall, James Taylor, Nora Jones. But James Taylor, to me, he's as big as he is, I still think he should be bigger. Yeah. He's just one of those guys. Yeah. For one thing, nobody plays acoustic guitar and gets acoustic guitar sounds like that guy. It's unbelievable, his touch.
Yeah. People underestimate, because you're a guitar player, so you understand it. But the people that don't play the guitar don't understand how complicated the things that he does are. He is just an amazing artist and an amazing person. Fantastic.
Yeah. I was listening to a show a while back about his beginnings and stuff, and he was it his show on the Audible thing that he did? No. It was actually something totally different. It was actually an interview with somebody totally different, talking about James Taylor's early days.
Okay, so you really need to get the Audible book Break Shot, which is James talking about his life up to age 21. It's just unbelievable. It's so well done. He's so articulate and so incisive, intelligent, just really, really something.
Yeah. Well, and it's so amazing. Those days of the singer-songwriter, they were a magical time. There was a Carly Simon hymn, of course, Carole King, the queen of them all. And all that stuff was happening. And that Elton John sort of rode that wave in as well. That was all part of that same thing that was going on. It was a much more intimate way of presenting music.
Well, I think so that era of musician, the Laurel Canyon days really just came after an era when it was really singers and songwriters were two different things. You had the whole Brill building thing, where that's where the term A&R guy, artist and repertoire, that was the guy that put artists and music together. Right. And then all of a sudden you had this wave of people, starting with folk singers, moving into Laurel Canyon, starting to write about their own experiences, as opposed to, I went to the dance, or, you're my girl, and that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the biggest segment of the population, the baby boomers, were looking for a change, caught on. Then you had the little drug things come in, and all that alchemy of all that, exploded that music. If you think about it, what came out of there is just phenomenal. So it's and we've been really, really lucky to represent some of those people that were just, the forerunners of an entire generation of music.
Yeah, I got a quick question, if it's okay, that lends into this. Sam, you've obviously worked with so many A-list artists. Really, it set the tone for music for many, many years with many of the artists that you've worked with and represented. What's your secret sauce? How do you know when you see an artist that there's something special there? Is there anything in particular that you're looking for, or?
I don't approach it like, I got a big glare on my head.
Yeah, the sun's getting brighter, I think.
Is it kind of weird?
Sun's coming out.
Yeah. I wonder if I can just move.
Yeah, you're a little washed out, that's for sure.
Okay, let's put a pause button. I'm going to move into a better spot. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so
yeah, so
ask the question again.
Sure. Yeah. So, you work with so many amazing artists, A-listers that have really set the tone for so many different music genres internationally. What do you look for in an artist that makes you say, there's something special there? Is there anything particular that just it clicks with you, or is it just a process to get to that point? Or
I think it starts out as gut, just gut feel, and then there's a certain amount of analysis that goes with it. And when you think about it, it's really, does someone have a really memorable voice that in other words, not necessarily Celine Dion hit the notes in a crazy way, but is a voice like a Norah Jones, whose voice is you hear it instantly, that voice is so recognizable. If it comes on the radio or whatever, it's just one of those iconic voices.
Right.
Is there a lyric that just might completely move you, change the world? Go all the way back to me walking up the street and Bob Dylan's song coming out and me going, wow, that's what was it about that? I still don't know what Positively 4th Street's about. But all I know, somehow it kind of got me.
Right.
Is there some energy like the Beatles? The first time I heard them, I mean, it really is more or less a gut thing. And then there's a certain amount of, okay, that's really cool, but am I just going to be hitting my head against the wall completely and not? It's not so much about, am I going to waste my time and not make any money? It's really more about, am I going to match the expectations of that artist? So if an artist comes along and is doing something that's really, really alternative, that I think is super talented, and they maybe think they're going to be, playing in front of 80,000 people, and I recognize that I don't think so, then we're going to have a disconnect at some point in our relationship. Yeah. So it's also about what's the expectation of the artist, and as to whether I get involved. We try to help develop some younger artists in our company, and there was this young artist, who really shows some promise and was asking me a question, and I said to him, I said, look, let me ask you a question. Are you really interested in playing for, an arena full of people? Or are you interested in playing for your own audience? And he said, I just want the people that listen to my music to really get it and love it. And I don't care if it's a club site. And I went, okay, we're going to help you. I like that. Like, he really wanted to get a message across, as opposed to just be a star. That's kind of a different game. So I don't know. It's a gut thing. And guess what? I'm not always right. I just got to be right more than I'm wrong. So
got a pretty good batting average.
Yeah, it's not bad, but also been lucky enough to get hired on with some artists that have already created careers for themselves and stuff. So that's cool too.
Anybody out there right now that really turns your crank? Somebody out there that's happening that you go, wow, this is like any new artists? Any new artists that really turn your crank?
Well, you mean new artists that I represent, or that are just out there? Just
anybody. You mentioned Ed Sheeran, for example.
Oh, you mean like just bigger artists? Oh, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. That's what happens as you advance. You're not. I'm not as tuned in as I was when I was maybe 16, 17, 20. Yeah. But
here's a good way to ask that. Who's on your playlist?
Yeah. Well, now that's an interesting question. So if I gave you, I made this playlist. Well, here. Okay. How about this? I'll just look at my playlist. All right. I'll show you.
Yeah. Who's on Sam's playlist? Because that probably speaks a lot.
Yeah.
That's a very good question, and I'll just go. And I love this, and I love Spotify for that reason, much as I might not like it for some other reason. And my playlist is, I got a bunch of playlists, right? But if I look at my what I call just like a party place, if I'm having people over for dinner, it goes from the Temptations to Michael McDonald to Bruno Mars to Sam Smith to Frank Sinatra to Tony Bennett to Bobby Darin to Nat King Cole to Michael Bublé to Diana Krall to Fred Astaire to Sarah McLachlan to Al Green to Gladys Knight to Smokey Robinson to James Taylor, all the way to Duke Ellington, Neil Diamond, Journey, Frankie Valli, Rod Stewart, Jimmy Ruffin, Bob Dylan, Van Morrison.
That's some range.
What a mix! Wow.
So that's kind of an, but it's funny. But when we have a dinner party or something, we throw that thing on. People all go, "Wow, that's a great playlist. Where'd you get that?" Yeah, my taste is really eclectic that way. There's a young artist I've been working with for a couple of years, Jordan Smith. Jordan won The Voice a few years ago. If you remember, he's the guy that finished up with Somebody to Love. Big guy with just this unbelievable, well, maybe the best voice I've ever heard in my life. Just a fantastic singer and just a beautiful guy. And first record, well, his Christmas record did well. First record on Republic was a complete mismatch because they're more about Drake and that kind of stuff. So, but he's moved into the faith-based music field, so more of a Christian record that's coming out. But just he's from the heart, and that's the other thing you asked me. What do I look for? I look for a voice that's connected to the heart. If you understand that, in other words, when you hear Sarah McLachlan sing, it's impossible to not understand the emotion that comes through. She can't even be in a sound check without her heart coming through the music.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like that. Is there, how real is it? Are they really feeling it, or are they just pretending?
As a follow-on to that,
you talked before about voices too, about the quirkiness. Like you talk about Bob Dylan, who attracted you, but even going back to some of the earlier bands that you managed, like Ray McGuire could be known as having a quirky voice. Doug Bennett, especially.
Yeah.
But there was no mistaking who they were when you heard them sing.
That's right. Exactly right.
So there's that connection too. There's the great voices and the quirky voices. Sometimes, well, look at Randy Bachman. His biggest hits have been with him singing.
That's right.
He certainly is no God's gift to voices, but he's got a voice that's not, unmistakable.
Yeah. And well, in his case, songs with monster hooks, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, but did I cut you off, Scott? I'm sorry.
Oh no,
Charles.
Sorry about that. No, Sam, you were speaking about the artists that you've represented, and I'm wondering, you've had the opportunity to work with such amazing talent. What common characteristics have you seen that allow these people to have such stamina, like James Taylor and Sarah McLachlan? Like, what are the characteristics? Like, what's the grit factor that allows them to stay on as an artist?
The longevity.
Yeah.
I think that when an artist is coming up, they're building a constituency. Okay, a constituency of fans, if you will, that really lock in. And sometimes that's very wide, but it's what has their connection been? How powerful is that connection so that people will stay with them? How visceral are some of the experiences that people have had, listening to or reacting to their music? And in particular, what is the live music experience been? It's always more powerful when these folks have gone out and toured a lot and put on shows that connected with the audience in a big way, not just lights and sound and and pyro and all that shit, but what's that connection been? And that connection is rarely made unless the artist really means what they're saying and singing.
Yes.
So I think the artists that I represent, because I go to the shows and I see that connection and I see what people say about them. And I think if that connection is powerful, as much as other artists are always coming up, there's a certain constituency that sticks with that artist forever. And one of my jobs as manager is to try to broaden that constituency through, obviously awareness, promotion, publicity, news, and so on.
Thank you.
So in your situation right now, how active are you in the management business? Are you still actively managing? Have you sort of relaxed it? Have you left it to other people?
I would say it kind of works like this. You know, when I was coming up as a young guy, I just wanted to build a big company because I felt that a build company could have more clout to affect the career of an artist. It's just there's one thing to being independent, just looking after the day-to-day needs. It's a tough business, and you've got to have some muscle, right? So I wanted to build a bigger company, and as you get a little older, the growing thing starts to slow down because the amount of energy it takes to break into artists or get involved is just massive. So at this point, the younger folks in the organization are out always trying to help and look for new talent, but for Steve and I think Bruce to some extent, it's really about looking after the clientele that we've had for a long time, our core, whether it's Albus, Costello, or Diana, or James, or Sarah, and the rest of them. It's just it's a full-time thing for us, both personally and corporately, to look after these people. So there's no slowdown. This is a job. You can't do this part-time. You know this, Mick. It's like pushing a rock up a hill. The minute you stop, it's going to fall right on your head. Yeah. So you got to keep pushing. So, I mean, I might be over here in Hawaii because of the coronavirus stuff, but just about I'm on this phone just as much as ever, and I don't have any interest in retiring or quitting because it just doesn't appeal to me. The whole notion of doing nothing doesn't really appeal.
Well,
to
you
me.
retire to do what you like. If you already do what you like, you have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I remember once I said to Tony Bennett. I said, Tony, man, you work so hard, man. I wish you could give a seminar to some of my clients. He says, I've never worked a day in my life. He said,
wow.
Yeah. I used to say that all the time. I don't go to work. I go to play.
Yeah.
Interesting. So where do you see the music business right now? I mean, there's a lot of people that have, condemned the Spotify, as you sort of alluded to a bit, the iTunes and the revenue from artists, the streaming as opposed to record sales. I mean, we know that's affected everybody. Where do you see it going?
I think that that's a double-edged sword. A young artist can basically establish their own career, releasing independently, in that format. But the competition is immense. They used to talk about the long tail in the early days of streaming, and it's now true. There's all kinds of music that you can hear. I can go on Spotify and hear anything, the most obscure thing ever.
Well, I heard a stat that 65,000 songs are released every day. Yeah,
I believe that. Yeah. So how do you break through that?
Yeah.
And the income is really relegated to those at the very top of that equation. So money from records is more difficult.
It's gone back. Records have become souvenirs like they were in the beginning. They were just sold as swag at the beginning, and now they've become that again. The only time you sell shows.
I tell my clients that you're making a new record. It's nothing more than an expensive poster for your tour, right?
Yes.
And that's what it is. So that's disconcerting. The other thing that's maybe even more disconcerting is the fact that people put out songs, and the younger generation is really just listening to songs and not albums, and they're not really, with rare exception, they're not connecting with an artist long term. Well, I talked about this constituency thing. That's a much harder thing to build now. There are exceptions, but it's a lot harder to build. So I don't know. I think the music business on the artist side, I think is getting more and more difficult. I think on the money side, the record companies have figured it out and they're making a fortune. So they kind of woke up and went, well, if it streams, does it make any difference to me if I have 100 artists streaming 10 times each, or if I have one artist streaming 1,000 times? It's the same income to them.
Yes.
So they are killing it. They're making a fortune. And as far as development's concerned, that's a problem because the artists or the record companies are now in a position financially to set up massive research labs, so to speak, and they simply scroll the internet, and they wait till someone pops up on their own, getting a whole bunch of streams. There's enough of a buzz. There's your development phase. They jump in, they make a deal, and take it from there. So that used to be, we need to cover tour shortfall. We need to put that band on the road for 2 years. They need to learn their craft. They learn to build up a direct to the audience skill set and develop as artists, where it's completely different now. It's all generalized. It's mostly just song oriented. So it's a different world for sure.
And it's coming directly from the artists more these days than ever before. It always kind of did to a degree. Artists always had to, at least in some form, build, like you said, their own sort of constituency and build that up to a point of where they get noticed by somebody like you, let's say back in the day. This is, let's take it to this level. Let's see if we can move into this level, and then pushing it again and again. But now it's almost like an artist has to sell 1 million copies. They have to have probably 30 million streams before they're even noticed, It's insane. It's hard to say where it's going to go from here. It's all guesswork. It's certainly artists only make money from live shows these days, for the most part.
Pretty much.
Or endorsement deals or things like this, I suppose.
Generally speaking,
Yeah, movie soundtracks or songs and movies. That's
not much there. No,
not
a lot there. That's really more about if you get lucky to get a visual representation of your song that basically enhances the song and gets you known as an artist. That's what that's about.
Right. Yeah, but that's pretty much all that's left, it seems, because to rise.
If you're a writer, if you're a writer, there is revenue, and there is revenue if you get enough streams and stuff, but it's definitely more difficult.
Mm-hmm. I know we're going to probably have some sort of symposium on this show and talk with some people and pull them in on where they feel this is all going, because everybody's guess is as good as everybody else's at this point. Like you say, the record companies are making money hand over foot, and only the people at the very top echelon, like the Beyoncés and the Drakes, as you mentioned, and that sort of thing, are the ones they're making gazillions. They're making more money than has ever been made in the music business before.
Yeah,
but it's a 360 deal.
Yeah, well, look, the record companies, the smart guys, banked on the notion that eventually music will be like water and electricity, and every house will just basically have like a tap that turns it on, and they'll pay a one subscription fee that will get divided up amongst all the musicians, and it'll be so huge because it'll be every home virtually that even the smaller artists will share in the revenue in a better way. That's the I don't know if that happens or not. I don't think it happens for a while. Maybe it's 5 or 7 or 10 years, but it might go that way. But I mean, in a funny kind of way, our artists that didn't break through 20 years ago weren't making a lot of money either.
No, that's true.
I mean, you've got to get to a certain point just to earn revenue. Yeah,
if you sold 500,000 copies of an album back in the day, you still owed money.
Yeah, well, you had a smart guy like me that would go into a record company and say, well, that 500,000 means it should be 5 million, which means you should advance them some money. And you kind of get the,
Right. But people, there's a certain side of my brain that says, when people are bitching about streaming and all this sort of stuff, I go, well, in a way, I mean, having me being a never was in that regard, I've never been part of that thing. I've only seen it from the outside looking in, but I don't really see it that much different. I just don't, unless. Except for a band could actually have a career on a million selling album. But nowadays, there's no such thing as a million selling album. So, that's the only real difference.
Well, it's pretty different. Like if you were an artist that sold 500 to 1 million units back then, you made some revenue. And basically that meant you had enough of a stature to tour to make money from that. And, if you were in that category, you can make pretty good living.
Right. Okay. So where does Sam go from here? I know we're limited for time with you, and I don't want to take.
I'm going to the beach. No, it's raining. Yeah. I think I keep doing what I'm doing. We just keep looking after our artists, so we keep our eye open for anyone else that we might want to represent. I mean, I've had way more time. I think that I sold my agency business a couple of years ago, and that enabled a lot more time for our management side of the business, which was, I guess, bigger and more international in stature. So there's that. And also I I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur, so I'm in a number of other businesses, right? And just founding a couple of new ones, mushroom business, cannabis business, liquor business, all kinds of stuff, just for fun and keep my brain active. So, there's no, that doesn't seem to be a slowdown, which is, it's really odd. It's really odd, but there doesn't seem to be a slowdown.
Well, it depends on where you're at. I mean, really, I haven't played in front of an audience since it's been over a year now. It was March 7th of last year was the last time I played in front of people for real.
Oh,
but I've probably been busier than ever before.
Yeah.
So because it depends on where your mindset is. I mean, it's like I put 10 hours a day in my studio just working on projects and things. So there's always another way to do it.
That's right.
I'll come out of it with more to offer.
Yeah. And you're that kind of person. I think I am too. That if all of a sudden something leaves or you're not doing one thing, it isn't like you're staring out space. You kind of find something else and you dig in. Right?
Yeah, of course.
That's kind of how you do it. It's just If you're in the business this long, it's you're a lifer. That you're always finding. I mean, I'm pretty much reinventing myself. Probably on the average every 2 years. That's good. That keeps you young.
Well,
it was James Taylor's birthday yesterday, and I sent him a note and I said, "There's a great line that the old baseball pitcher Satchel Paige said, right? Guys like me getting old, he said, if you didn't know how old you was, how old would you be?" Yeah, very true. That's a great way to look at it.
The only odd thing every once in a while is like as you get a little older and you're talking to some artist who's in the 20s, and I just wonder, they're looking at me going, that guy's ancient, right? So there's a certain amount of that where you're just not in some ways to some younger artists maybe not as relevant and all that kind of stuff, but that's okay. We just carry on.
I was talking to the group today before you came on, and I was relaying a story that reminded me back when Prism got Henry Small in and Ron Tabak was doing nothing. Anyway, they formed the Ron Tabak Band. Ron Tabak was, for you international people, Ron Tabak was the original lead singer of the band Prism from Canada. And I was asked to play guitar in that band. And so there's John Hall, Rocket Norton, and Ron Tabak from Prism, Don Younger from Trooper, and me on guitar. Now, I was 23 at that time. And I remember seeing graffiti all over the clubs that we were playing in the dressing room saying, the Ron Tabak Band, recliner rockers. The oldest person in that band might have been 30.
Yes,
it's like, are you kidding me? Like, and so I was saying to the gang here, I was going, now you see why when I was approaching 25, I was sweating. My career was over. I'm going, what am I going to do? It's amazing. It still amazes me that I'm still in the business after all these years.
Ditto. I can remember saying to myself, dead serious, man, if you find me backstage at some concert when I'm 40, take me out and fucking shoot me. And on my 40th birthday, literally, I was in Toronto at Lee's Palace with Art Bergman, trying to get him off heroin and on stage, right? That's where I was on my 40th birthday. I'll never forget to think, this is wrong. This is so wrong.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, Mark LaFrance, we both know Mark dearly, and Mark has always said, never say never. The minute you say never, you're going to find yourself going to that place you said you'll never do.
He just put out a new album. He just sent it to me just the other day. I haven't heard it yet. Just good for him.
Well, yeah, it's actually a song that we co-wrote.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I did the video as well. That's what I mean. I've been busy.
There's a great. Actually, you remind Henry Small, but it's reminded me. I heard that when Prism looked like they were going to break through, and Bruce Allen called up Henry, and he said, you're going to be big, Small.
Henry Small. There's another one. Now there's a voice that's unbelievable. Every time I remember the first time I heard him sing was with this band Small Wonder, backing up April Wine when I was 17 years old. And I remember going, who is this guy? I'd never heard a voice like that.
Well, that's a whole other topic. All the great talent that doesn't break through and why. We know why good talent breaks through, but the great talent that doesn't break through, they didn't get a shot or they were the best bell bottoms in tight pants season or whatever. It's just that part's sad because there are people with your band Shama was fantastic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys had a real shot. I think
I think we were all young, and maybe you guys you overthought everything a little bit too much, and somehow it just kind of went away.
Our
moment?
biggest problem, we didn't have the songs. We just didn't have the songs. We had everything else in place. We didn't have the songs. Yeah. So, and it's like anything, all the pieces of that pie have to be perfect. You've got to have the right law firm. You've got to have the right record company. You've got to have the right management, the right band, the right look, the right marketing, the right, everything has to be. And if any one of those pieces of the pie are missing, you're toast. It's not going to work.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, it's lining up. Well, thank you for your time, Sam. I know you have to run, and this has been absolutely wonderful. And I really appreciate you you calling us up and allowing us to do this. And
pleasure. Great.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's just been wonderful.
I hope I get to see you soon. It's been a long time. I live in Victoria now. I got.
I kind of knew that. I see Mike Sicoli the odd time, and he told me that. So good for you. Yeah.
Well, you guys are golfing buddies, so.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks so much, Sam. I really appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care, Sam.
Take care.
Thanks for coming on the show. Take care.
Pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. Check out our many other episodes and vignettes for more great content. And please like, share, and subscribe, and become a member at SocialNRGPresents.com to access all our content and earn valuable energy points just for watching.